All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the genealogy workshop using library resources here at the Kentucky Historical Society. My name is Daniel Ware, and I'm the genealogy librarian here. Today, we're going to mainly just talk about kind of some of the different resources and different things that you can find here at the Martin F. Schmidt Research Library. Even possible ways, if you can't physically come here in person, that we could fulfill your research request. I will talk about that as well. So this is just kind of a general little quick list as far as some of the things I'm going to discuss. I'm going to try to go through them fairly quickly because, as I've learned from giving a similar talk about this, it kind of stretches on for a good while. So and I want to leave time for any questions or anything like that. So yeah, we're going to talk about kind of some of the different areas that we have here at the library and some of the different types of records that you can find here, or documents or resources that we do have. The Martin F. Schmidt Research Library, it's a genealogy and research library here at the Kentucky Historical Society. It holds works pertaining to all 120 Kentucky counties. You can come here if you're needing help with researching for a book you might be writing, or if you're writing a paper, or if you're just searching for your Kentucky ancestors in general. We have our reference collection. Basically, when you first walk in, it's going to hold reference books for early Kentucky genealogy and history, early Kentucky landowner books, books containing early vital records for Kentucky. We also have Kentucky encyclopedias, and then we do also have Draper papers, which I haven't personally used them a whole lot myself, but I do know that they're more if you're looking into very early Kentucky related ancestors and that kind of stuff. Those can be very vital for that research. And for those that are on Zoom, I do have a kind of a picture you can see of a general idea of what our reference collection looks like right there. I wanted to provide some pictures so everybody, whether you're here in person or if you're on Zoom, you can get an idea of some of the sections that we have and some of the different type of records we have. There's also, we have our library computers. That's another main area that we do have patrons come in and come to, because here you can find our library catalog. You can also find digital collections, and those would be anything that our digital archivists have digitized over the years, such as manuscripts or letters or postcards even. There's also the objects catalog, which that will show you particular items, like there might be a dress or a particular military garb from somebody that's donated to us over the years for a particular time period. So you can look there to see if there's a particular set of furniture or china or something that might have been donated, and that's more in the physical collection area. And all of these three things that I've just mentioned, you can actually look at on our website from your own home, so you don't have to actually physically be here. I will forewarn, though, that the library catalog, it would be more just to see what we have in our collection. You would still have to, for some of the library items, still have to physically come here to look at said items. But the digital collections, like I mentioned, those are going to be things that are digitized that you can actually look at from your own home. We also have ancestry and family search, as far as just the genealogy databases that you may look at when you're doing your research. And you can come in here, and we do have a special library edition of ancestry that you can get on and look at your research for. And in family search, it's free. You can pretty much get to it anywhere, but we do have that as well. We also We are also fortunate to have Fold 3, which is, I believe, through Ancestry, and that's for if you do have military records you're looking for as far as an ancestor, if they fought in a particular war, or or things like that, or were in the military. And there's also other resources that you can get to when you look on our website as well on these computers. And then here's a, for those at home, here's a picture of like our computers and kind of our computer area that you can look at. We also do have maps and atlases. We have them for different Kentucky counties, and a lot of times they can help show you what some of the boundaries were. You can kind of see changes on particular areas over time, and certain maps or atlases that we do have can also tell you, this particular area may have produced this particular like crop, or this might have been like what they really raised and kind of their economic livelihood, I guess you could say. And then we do have some atlases I have seen that do show like homesteads for certain places. So, if you find the right time period and the right map, you might potentially see where a ancestor may have had a homestead. Because I have on occasion helped people with a research request, and I have found, I think it was in Shelby County in 1882, they had a particular homestead in a particular location. We were able to see it on one of the atlases. And here is an example of more of the maps, because I do have more people usually look at the maps than anything. The ones on the pictures on the right are the fixtures that hold our maps, and on the top, there's like little tabletops on the top. And you can actually, there's a couple of indexes, so you can see where a particular map is and what drawer it's in, so that can help you locate which folder and which drawer you want to look at. And then the one on the left is just an example of a map of Scott County, just to kind of give you an idea of some of the different types of maps that we do have. And there's also some like that we do have in our archives, and those you would have to make a special request for through like our call slips and all that kind of stuff. But we do have just these that are in these particular drawers as you're going back to our OpenStax section. Okay, surname files, that's a pretty useful area that we do point to a lot of people to, especially if they're trying to get an idea of where they want to start. If they at least have like a family name, then we'll be like, okay, we'll check the surname files, because then you can usually find, either correspondences or, newspaper articles, or sometimes there will even be like actual charted out listings of, this person was the son of this person, and, or this person married this person. So you can get an idea of, potentially, you can find particular records or names or places or locations that can point you to other records that we have in our collection. And I will say that most of these folders, depending on the family and everything, I kind of like to say they're kind of almost a hodgepodge sometimes, because some of them will have more than others, and they'll have, it's basically just what's been donated to us over the years or what we've collected. So when it comes to that kind of case, there could be more in this one folder for this one family than this other family, and it's kind of hit or miss on what you're going to find just based on everything we've collected over the years. Also, I have noticed like there will be quite a lot of times surnames, they might be spelled differently, just depending, phonetically, they might have heard it a certain way and wrote it down a certain way. And typically, from what I can tell in most of the surname files, even if it's a surname that has like 3 different ways it was spelled, I've seen quite a few times where they'll try to kind of just consolidate everything into one particular surname file. But then I have also seen sometimes where they do have a separate one for a slightly different spelt surname. So, you know, it just kind of depends, I guess, on when these surname files were originally getting made and things like that, and how they decided to, I guess, separate them. And then I will apologize because some of these pictures I had to shrink down so I could fit them in into my PowerPoint. But on the left side, that's basically in our open stacks in our back area when you come into the library, and that's one of the first sites you're going to see when you walk in. And that big chunk of filing cabinet, that's the surname file section. And then I wanted to kind of show a little detail of one of the drawers, kind of give you an idea of what you would potentially see if you were going to look for a surname file. And so like this particular drawer is Gibbs through Gifford. So, you know, if you have a family name that is either Gibbs or Gifford or alphabetically in between those two names, then you'll want to look through that drawer. And in some cases, some surnames will have like 17 folders so it'll be like Smith 1, Smith 2, Smith 3, and so on. And then depending, we will occasionally have surname files on an actual specific individual, especially if it was like a governor or somebody like that. So it doesn't hurt to look into these, because you might find in one of the 10 surname files that you need, you know, of that surname, you know, you might find something useful. And there's also county files, which they're, from what I can tell, they're pretty similar to the surname files, except it's more directed towards the county itself. Usually you want to look here if you're looking for a particular, like I've looked, if I was looking for a particular, like a church or a school that was in this particular county, it can be useful because a lot of the folders that are in these drawers will be like Jefferson County historic, you know, buildings, Jefferson County schools, Jefferson County maps. That's how they're usually separated in their folders. So it is can be very useful if you're looking more into that kind of, you know, for a school or for a particular building, or, you know, or something like that when it's related to the county. And then here's an example of the county files. It's kind of similar to the surname files, and they're going to be basically right to your right if you're walking in, right across from where the surname files are. And then like this example is for like Greene and Greenup County. So there's like Greene County maps, Greene County place names. So yeah, that's kind of what you're going to be finding most of the time when you're looking in the county files.
Daniel?
Yes.
Does that also show cemeteries?
Sorry, what was that?
Will that also show cemeteries?
Yeah, I have seen in certain, a patron here asked if the county files would include cemetery related files. Yes, it kind of depends on the county. Some counties don't necessarily have those files, but I have seen a lot of times the county will say like, it'll say like Greene County, and it'll say cemetery records, or, you know, there's even church ones, you know, that'll be about particular, like, I guess, branches of churches. Like there might be like Greene County, like Baptist church, you know. So yeah, so depending on the county, I have seen where there will be specific ones that are about cemeteries or cemetery records. So I would check those out if you're looking for a particular cemetery in a county.
Even old family cemeteries?
I potentially, patron was asking if that included old family cemeteries. There's a chance. I mean, it wouldn't hurt to look, but I couldn't guarantee that necessarily.
So these county files are contributed information.
Yes. The county files, they're contributed. They're just like the surname files, where it's kind of more stuff that's been collected or has been donated, or, you know, things like that. So it kind of, unfortunately, it can be hit or miss.
What do you do if the county line changed?
1800s and 1900 in that period. So you've got like Shelby and Franklin.
As far as like the county files,
Yeah, I mean, would you then look in both, I guess?
yes, I would look in both counties. If the county lines changed, and I would check both county files for both counties, like Shelby and Franklin. Just because, I mean, I usually tell people, and I do that myself, just in general research as well, because I will, there will be somebody that might have been born, in 1825, and in the county that they were living in, that county may have not been part of, it may have been a part of a different county in 1825. So, if I'm looking for, if there was county changes just in general, yeah, I typically try to check both counties just in case there was like an overlap. Let me see, I got a question on here. Oh, yes. Yes, I was trying to, I apologize. So yes, I'm answering a question they're asking about when it comes to the county files. If the county changed lines between a certain period, what would we do about that? And that's what I was answering, was that we would check both county files if they changed, if Shelby County and Franklin County, if there was a change between those two, yeah, we would check both areas. Okay, and there are also Kentucky subject files.
You were saying the subject files and then the county files. They're here somewhere.
Yes, I have a patron that was asking about the county files and the subject files, and if they're here. Yes, they are. When you go back into our open stacks area where all of our books and things are, which is when you walk in, it would basically, you would take a right when you get to the main opening of our library, and all of these materials will be in our open stacks area.
Okay, if somebody like myself, I donated a lot of the history of the Whitlocks from the Christian County to Sherry Daniels a few years ago. I think she said she was going to scan them, and because she opened a file on the Whitlocks on my family from Christian County. So I'm just wondering where those files are, because even University of Louisville did not have the article 1884 Chicago, Illinois, Louisville, Kentucky article from Christian County. They're from their library. I gave that to them. So, and I brought it to Sherry. So I think she was going to scan it and put it in your files. Okay.
So a question was asked about donated materials and where, if we copied them into our records, made copies of them, and where would they be put into our files? I was gonna say, I did see the book that you were telling me about. That's in our family history section. So yes, a lot of times if items, family histories, materials get donated to us, we will, especially if it's about a particular family, we'll usually put it in our family history section. And I will mention that in a moment, talk a little more about that as well. But yeah, anyways, so the Kentucky subject files, those are going to be, they're in a set of filing cabinets as well. And they're more dealing with particular subjects. Like for example, I recently was looking into a particular geological site that was in Kentucky that I had a patron asking me about. And so I went to our Kentucky subject files, and we have a couple of folders that are just strictly about geology in Kentucky. And so I looked through that. And so sometimes I haven't used particularly the Kentucky subject files as much as some of the other files, but it can be of use if there's somebody wondering about a particular subject, and not necessarily a specific like person, like in this case, a geological site. We might have something in our geology section that would talk about that particular site or that particular operation. We do have like, just general like schools in Kentucky, not necessarily tied to one specific county. You might want to look at those files to just see, that would talk about how schools were in Kentucky, and things like that. Yep, hold on. Can't move. There we go. And then once again, I just wanted to kind of show a little example for everybody to see what some of the files might be if you were going to look at the Kentucky subject files. So for example, for here, some of these are like, we have folders on folklore. We have multiple folders. So it's kind of things like that. And so it's more of a, not specifically a person or a place. So that's where like some of this will kind of go. Okay, and here we go. Here are family histories and books. So a lot of times individuals will donate to us books that were written about a particular family or a particular branch of a family. And so usually when we get those, they'll go into, we have a special section. It's actually right to the left of our, like right beside where our surname files are, when you start getting into the actual like shelves of books that we have. These are very useful as well. I point to people to this area after, this and the surname files are probably my two, especially if you're trying to kind of get an idea and kind of where you're wanting to go as far as your family history research. Because usually you can find like a good background information. And, a lot of these I've looked through. Now, some of them are better than others. It just kind of depends on what, I guess, whoever put the book together, what they put together, I guess. But a lot of them will actually kind of give you a narrative of this particular family. It might tell you, who their descendants were, where they were born, where they came from, who they married, where they went off to when they migrated further, on along. So a lot of these you can get kind of an idea of, a jumping off point, I guess, so to speak, of, I guess, you can get names of places or other family member names that you can look for when you want to go look at like other records and resources. And then, yeah, this is just kind of one little picture of some of the shelving in that section. And that's literally when you walk in to our back open stacks area, it's going to be like your first set of actual shelved books. So yeah, and I definitely suggest if people need a good starting point to look here, as well as the surname files.
Are these filed by surname or other?
I had a question about if these are filed by surname. Yes, they're in alphabetical, they're ordered based on, the family surname. So yeah, if you had a surname of Abbott, that would be one of the first earlier books that'll be on the shelf, versus if you had, like Williams as a surname, that'll be further on down. And I do want to mention that we do have just the more general like library books that you might find in other libraries, such as, just history books in general. We've got, Kentucky history books. We've got, books about, the different wars. We do have church related books and histories. I have used that to kind of help me figure out if a particular family lived in a certain place at a certain time. Because we do have some that will be like, like Butler, it'll be like this particular Baptist church in Butler County It might have like the minutes, and it might have lists of who were members of that church at that particular time. So, things like that can be useful as well, especially if you're trying to find an alternate resource to, where a person may have been born and living, if you can't find, other records like that. There's also biographies. We do have biographies. We do have books, art books, architecture books, and then many other books that, I could go on and on about, but we'll save a little time. And once again, this is just kind of an idea of kind of what those books look like that are in our general stacks area. And we do actually have, we have a decent amount of out of state. More of them are books. I wouldn't say I don't remember there being anything besides really any books, but a lot of them, I've actually found a lot of use for them, especially as of late, because I will have research requests that will either the person may have been born in Virginia or, Tennessee, they'll be born in another state, or if it's before Kentucky became a state, and then they eventually, migrated to Kentucky, or, even the opposite. I'll have, an ancestor that I'm researching that was born in Kentucky and then they moved out west. And so I do use these quite a bit to kind of try to follow that particular family, just to get as much information as I can for the patron that I'm assisting. And so some of the books in this section are more like just strictly like just state related, like it's not broken down to the county. Like we do have some like Virginia books that are just like prominent families of Virginia who married or something to that effect, but then we also have them broken down. Like we'll have a first section that is more of the general state related material, and then we'll start having little sections that are alphabetized based on certain counties in that state. And then we might have like a census for, a particular census or census that for a particular county, like in North Carolina, it just kind of depends, and we do have quite a few people that do come in here that will look at this area just to, because they do have family that did, migrate to other states or, came from other states. So this can be very useful as well, even if, you're afraid you're going to like hit a brick wall of them leaving this, Kentucky. And here's just some examples, such as like the Michigan Pioneer and historical collections. We got, history of York County, Nebraska. We got some stuff for West Virginia, and then, that's kind of the general idea, just a bunch of different books. And then we do have our counties, our Kentucky County area. I do point to people a lot for that. That's very useful. We have books on relating to all 120 counties of Kentucky. However, I will forewarn that unfortunately not all counties, when it comes to the materials we have, are created equally, because we have had, some counties and there may be half of a shelf versus, I think like Jefferson County, we have like pretty much like 3 whole like sections of shelves. So it just kind of depends on what we've gotten over the years, but they are very useful because I typically will go and look here first before I even look on anything on microfilm, because especially if I'm wanting to look at an index to make sure that, John Smith is listed in, Fayette County marriage records, I would rather first see like a print form to see if I can find just his name listed in the index, and, potentially get like a page number, or just to see if he's even like mentioned. And then, if I find them in like these indexes, then I'll try to go and bring out the microfilm and actually, find, the actual document that's on microfilm. But yeah, there's a lot of different records and indexes for the different, birth records, marriage records, death records, pensions, different, we've got histories of these particular counties and some of the towns involved. So those can be useful as well. But yes, this is like probably in my like top like 3, like this is what I like tell people to go look at, or I show it to them, or I use it myself. This is one of the top things that I use. And here's just a lot of it. I know looks a lot alike, because it's just, a bunch of the, same binded books and things, but I just kind of wanted to give you an idea of that. Okay. And then we do have more like the general, like national level periodicals. A lot of these are going to be more history related. Like there might be like, American history, or, American genealogist. I see a lot of like something genealogist in those titles. We do in this area actually have like things that are related to some national organizations, such as the Daughters of the American Revolution. And also I have noticed looking around through there, like when it comes to history related, like some of them are, we have some that are just about like the Civil War or related to that. So that's kind of what you're getting when you're looking in like these types of periodicals. And then we have state specific periodicals. Those are going to be kind of like all of our state related, the previous state related materials that I was talking about. Like they'll be separated by state, and then in each state's section of periodicals, they're going to be alphabetized by title. And these can be useful especially if you're wanting to find a particular publication and an article in, like we have people that will come in here and they'll ask about, an article from our publication, the Register, or an old Kentucky Ancestors publication, things like that. So sometimes these sections can be good as far as, if person is trying to find a very specific article that might be about their ancestor. So this can be useful in that kind of situation. And then here's just some pictures of just the periodicals in general. Like the top left hand corner is more of the general ones that run along the backside of our of the wall. And then you've got some that go more into the county or into the states. Okay, microfilm. Okay, so this is another area that I do quite a bit in. So this is one of my top things that I look to when I'm researching for individuals. And most of the records we do have copies of them on the microfilm. So I will end up, kind of like I mentioned before, if I do see something in the physical print, I'll try to, go here. I mean, sometimes I do skip that step, and I will just, especially if because we do have indexes of certain records on our microfilm as well. So if I can find some kind of index, and then go from there. We do have censuses, because when I have kind of adventured back there and looked around and just some of the different ones that we have. I believe we have, I can't remember on microfilm if we have any that go back to the 1791 or not, but I do believe we do have some that go up to about 1920, maybe 1930. And the case where I would use like those on the microfilm versus just the ones that we have in physical format is I have noticed that a lot of the counties and a lot of the censuses I've seen, like just in our books, don't necessarily go past, some of the latest ones I may have seen have been like 1900, 1910 at latest. Most of them that we have just in the physical format are going to be like in the mid 1800s. We do have some newspapers. So, there is a chance, depending on the county and the time period, that we may have, the right newspaper for if you're looking for a particular article or an obituary or something like that. We do have quite a bit tax lists. So that can always help you to figure out, where your ancestor lived and, and give you some more information, that way. We do have the vital records that were between 1852 and I think it was more 1910. I don't know why I put 1911, but we do have a lot of those, and I will kind of mention more about that when I speak on the specific records, but we do have that as well if you're needing to look for a particular vital statistic record. And I have seen there are some special like collections, special papers that we seem to have on microfilm. I haven't really delved into those personally, so but I just thought I would mention that. And we do have city directories. I have seen quite a few of those, and then there's many other ones too that would take a lot of time to go through. And then here's just some pictures kind of some of the microfilm process as far as what I work with. The very left hand corner, that's where we store the microfilm, and there's like little drawers that you slide out and you can pull out a box, which on the very right hand side, that's one of the boxes that we keep the microfilm roll in, and then that's just a roll of microfilm. And in the picture in the middle, those are our microfilm readers. They're more in a computer format. So there's more like a computer program that you would click into to help you run that program as far as looking at the microfilm. We do have archival materials, which I think I kind of may have mentioned a little bit about earlier. This is just some of the examples. We do have manuscripts and letters and maps and atlases, photographs, pamphlets, rare books, business records. Because I know I have looked at a collection once for a patron, and there were business related correspondences between a business owner and people he was working with, and they were needing copies of some of those. So we do have those kind of items and archives as well, and postcards and some photographs and things like that, and many other items. Okay, and we do have the African American research. I will be honest, sometimes it can be a little tough as far as specific things that we would have here that could help with that. I mean, I know usually, there's family history books that can be very useful. County related materials. I mean, because we do have in some of those county areas, I mean, we have books that are specifically about the African American the groups of African Americans that were in that particular town or county, and they're specifically geared towards that. Once again, surname files especially are very useful, because I mean, we've collected a lot of surname files over the years. So if you know the right surname, there's a good chance you can find something there. This is actually a group that I've been pointed to, that I have suggested to people as well, and that's the African American Genealogy Group of Kentucky, or AAGGKY. They are, that's what their sole purpose is to help break down these brick walls as far as Kentucky African American research. And so they're a valuable resource when it comes to breaking down those walls and actually finding things. And so they're very great. Okay, now I'm going to try to go through some record types as quickly as I can. Try not to make this go super long. But anyway, so here's some record types. These aren't necessarily all, I mean, there's definitely more than this, but these are some of the more general ones that you may come across or need to look for. They're going to be birth, marriage, death, land. I put wills, but that would fall more under actual probate records, but I wanted to specifically mention wills. And then there's census records and court records, and also military records. Birth records, I mean, as far as like actual, like the birth records, they were typically recorded between 1852 and 1910. And then once 1911 and on, basically they were more official certificates. And a lot of that you would have to really go to the Office of Vital Statistics for. Now they can be very hit or miss. I've learned looking into that and, learn from other people who've spoken about this. Because a lot of times we'll try to look and see, and sometimes some counties didn't record some of these records for a particular year, unfortunately, or those particular records might have gotten destroyed by like a natural disaster or, war or, human error. And I have had to actually explain to people too, that even if, say, you had a great grandmother who was born in, 1896 in Pulaski County, and, if it was, if they did record birth records in 1896 for Pulaski County, but, I may not necessarily find your ancestor's name listed in the birth record. I've had to explain, depending on, where they were born, the time of the year, I mean, they may have not just been able to get out and go, be born, go to a hospital, get born and be, recorded officially, and then also another interesting thing that I did learn at another conference last year, apparently it was very murky, like that whole 1852 to 1910, like apparently people didn't want to necessarily cooperate. The people that were actually going out and taking information were apparently not compensated very well. So, they may have not felt very inclined to try their hardest. So, those all things kind of factor in. And of course, obviously, like the Civil War, like almost no county recorded, or at least officially recorded anything in those years a lot of the times. So, depending on when they were born and other factors, their record may or may not be there, I guess is the moral of the story, unfortunately. There's marriage records. I mean, they kind of fall into the vital statistic records with the 1852, 1910. However, I do usually find some sort of marriage record predating 1852. That's usually seems to be a little easier to locate.
Is there no standard source before 1852?
I mean,
All hit or miss then?
I mean, pretty much. Yeah, I had a patron ask if there wasn't any kind of standard before 1852 as far as the record keeping of vital statistics. Yeah, unfortunately, not really. The 1852, 1910 was, I believe, kind of where they were first starting to kind of try to like kind of do an official
It's so often the
thing.
names repeat. I
Yeah.
have like 5 people with the same name, different ages,
Mhm.
and it's hard to figure it out.
Right. Yeah, yeah, the patron was mentioning a lot of similar names, the same names, and it getting very confusing and figuring out. And yes, that happens a lot, unfortunately. I've looked at records, and especially if they have a very common name too. Some of them do, and it can be very interesting trying to figure that out. Yes.
I would just like to ask, when you were talking about the records and marriage license,
Mhm.
Would it be easier if you know the county where you're looking for the surname to find? Because in Christian County, that's how I found the actually marriage license,
Mhm.
1848 of my Caucasian great-great-grandfather, but he was nationally known,
Mhm,
a
mhm,
medical doctor who graduated from U of L in 1842.
mhm, mhm.
That is Christian, because it was Christian County.
Right,
They got records there.
right.
and they're not-
Yes, I had a question about if looking for like marriage records, if it's better to know the county. Yes, that helps a lot, because I actually just recently, for another presentation, I had the librarian that I was interacting with. She wanted me to kind of do a little like surprise, like research find for one of her students. And of course, she listed this person's, ancestors, they were born in Kentucky was all that I guess they had information for, but then they knew that they got married in 1818 in Fayette County. And so then I could actually, I had like a time period and a location, especially, county, if you know the county, because we do, when people will call us and ask questions about their ancestors, or if, we get our requests through the mail, I mean, if they can tell us what the county was, then I can hone in like that particular area. Even if not necessarily have an exact date, at least I know like the general area and a kind of a general time frame. I mean, the more detail, the better. But yeah, that definitely county, because some people they'll just be like, I have an ancestor that did this in Kentucky. And it's kind of hard to, that's like a needle in a haystack, and I've had people do that before where, they were like, he was born in Kentucky, maybe around 1863. And it's like, well, that's good, but there could be like 6 of the same names from from different counties, and you don't know which one's which. So yeah, I would say that would definitely help a lot. But anyways, yeah. And so more with the marriage records. So some of the types that I have come across would be like marriage bonds, which from the way I understand them are more of like basically either the groom or the bride's, one of the male members of the bride's family would basically put down like almost like collateral or something, some money to make sure, like to guarantee that basically the marriage was going to happen. And usually the marriage would happen, a couple of days later, pretty soon afterwards. And that would be all that would be needed for, just to ensure that this was actually going to take place and happen. There are also just registers where you can see where, they registered to get married. And then there's actual marriage records where it lists, it might potentially list the married couple's parents, potentially. Some of them do, might list who married them. It'll give you a location, or at least the county where they were married. And I have actually looked at marriage records potentially to find parent names. If I can't find, this particular person's parents' names and anything else, I will try to look at that to figure out, or if somebody, witnessed or signed off on it, that might be like a brother or a relative of some sort as well. So that can be very, very useful as well. And then here's an example of a marriage bond, just to kind of give you an idea of that. And death records, they kind of fall into the same category as the birth records. So a lot of what I said about birth records, it's kind of the same for the death records. It's kind of hit or miss. And now, although I have come across, we do have on microfilm, we do have some death certificates that are basically 1911 to about, I think 1965. I think I saw some that were from like early 1960s. And so I actually have gone and looked at those to find alternate information for patrons in the past, like if they were wanting to find like the parents' names, or even like the birth record, which I mean, I know death certificates can err and be incorrect about certain things, but sometimes when you can't find a birth record or something else, some other record, this can be a pretty decent substitute. And now some of these I did do pictures of like more of like the physical book forms. But a lot like this example, I know it's really hard to read, but like this individual, it tells that she died from fever, and she was the daughter of and it gave her parents' names. So I mean, some of these can you can glean some information on like who their parents were. And I mean, I have actually had people contact me and they wanted to know like why their ancestor died or how they died, you know. And so sometimes you can find, you know, especially if it's on a death record, a death certificate, you know, a lot of times it should include, you know, what they died of. And, you know, so that can tell you information as well. Okay, and land records. Now, a good chunk of these that I'm talking about are more with like the, I guess like the land patent process. I haven't done a whole lot with these. I'm just kind of mentioning them as possibilities of things you might want to look into. And a lot of these, especially when it comes to the land patent process, I honestly would suggest contacting the Kentucky Land Office through the Secretary of State or the Secretary of State office. Yeah, and Candy Atkinson. She's the person you want to talk to, because I've actually heard her talk about, you know, this, you know, at least a couple of times, and yeah, she knows her stuff. But we do have, I guess you could say, I guess they're copies of some of these particular records. We do have those, but they're, you know, they're definitely very photocopy quality in book form. But if you want like the real actual records, I would check with them and Candy Atkinson. Yeah, there's the warrants, there's military warrants, and then the patents and surveys and all that goes into a lot of that, especially if it was the military ones, were more related to, you know, if you had an ancestor who like fought in the Revolutionary War or War of 1812, a lot of times their rewards were, you know, tracts of land and things like that. And they usually had to do a particular, they had to do like grow, they had to like live on that piece of land for a certain amount of time. And I think grow like a certain amount of like crop and, you know, kind of, I guess, prove themselves of, you know, owning that. And then I do know also, unfortunately, there were a lot of crisscrosses and confusion and, you know, people, you know, because back in the day, you know, they didn't really, they were like, oh yeah, you get this land, you get this land, you get this land, you know, they didn't really structure it really well, I don't think. So there were a lot of people, you know, disagreeing with one another on that.
What office was that? Secretary of
Oh, it's
Records?
Secretary of State. Yeah, I had a question about what the office was for the like land warrant process. Yes, it is the Secretary of State. They're the Kentucky Land Office that's within the Secretary of State office. And you would want to try to get a hold of Candy Atkinson. Yeah, Candy Atkinson. Now we do on microfilm and in some of our physical books, we do have like deeds and things like that. So if you are looking more for just, you know, deed records, you know, who passed land off to who, you know, you can come here and find that kind of stuff. These are examples from the copies of the like the warrants and land records that you would want to look at the Kentucky Land Office for. But I just wanted to show an example of, you know, if you did come here and you did want to look at, you know, some of these, this is what basically they would look like. And then there's also probate records, more particularly wills. That I feel like is one that people ask about a lot more as far as the probate records go. And a lot of those, you know, especially wills, you can potentially find parents or siblings or children. You know, some of these deceased individuals will have like an inventory, so you can kind of see what they were giving to who, and you know, see kind of what they had as far as, you know, their items, their inventory. Also, there are guardianship records that you can use or look for, if, especially if like an ancestor was a child and they were too young when their parents died. And so you can kind of use that to potentially find maybe where they went to after, you know, their parents died. And I could be wrong on this, but I do feel like I have heard that even in certain circumstances, even if the mother was still alive, there was a lot of times that they would still do the whole guardianship process, even though, their mother was alive and perfectly well. Just, yeah, just because of the whole, women and rights and that whole issue. I also, I didn't put it on here, but another good use for a will would be if you were looking for a female ancestor's maiden name, you could potentially learn that through, seeing like John Smith's daughter gets, a particular item in his will. And so then you would know that, the female ancestor that you're looking for, her last name was Smith or her maiden name was Smith. So that can also be a very useful document as far as, getting past brick walls. And then like, here's an example of a will. And it basically, they're leaving an estate to their wife and brother, and then they had a couple of brothers and a sister the sister was not named. And then they have the executors and witnesses, and potentially those could be relatives as well when you're looking at wills. Okay, census records. Okay, so I know technically, I guess certain areas had censuses before 1790, I believe, but like as far as like the like US census record, 1790 is the first one. And I just wanted to point out like certain important decades, important time periods as far as the censuses, like 1850 was the first to actually have like the full like household names. And I wish that it had been sooner because I'll, if I'm looking for, families and or a particular individual, it's really nice if it's 1850 or later, because I can see a whole household and see if this person lived where they lived and, potentially where they migrated, because you can kind of follow if they moved out of state or if they moved counties, depending on, if they're in one place in 1850 and in another place in 1860, I mean, potentially either the boundary, changed, or they actually did like physically move, and there's a time frame that something changed within that 10-year period. 1890 is pretty significant because I mean, pretty much most of those censuses are destroyed. I mean, there's bits and pieces and stuff been kind of reconstructed in certain places, but most of them were destroyed in a fire in 1921. You can also, when you're looking at censuses in general, if you look at like a page before, a page after, you can kind of see potentially neighbors and they might be relatives, and you kind of get a better understanding of your family and figure out other names that you might want to look into. And here is just another quick example of a census record from 1860 in Franklin County. Just kind of lists everybody in the household and their age, and the head of household, usually they had like an occupation that was listed, and that kind of stuff. And then there's court records. There are order books, which a lot of those, I saw a lot of those more than what we have as far as the microfilm and things like that. And those seem to be more like the orders that were given out by the court, that were given out to like the sheriff or to, particular parties. There are also common lawsuits, especially because, I mentioned, before, especially back in the day, people didn't have as much structuring on, property and on certain, things. So, there's equity records and common lawsuits, and people were going to court and fighting with each other. There's criminal indictments, although I haven't really looked at those, but I'm going to only presume that they're mainly about criminal indictments that were in court. But we do have those. So if you did need to look into, potential, criminal ancestor, they might be included in something like that. This is the example of an court order book, just to kind of give you an idea. Military records. Yeah, if you had an ancestor basically that fought in a war for Kentucky, or even like, if it was Revolutionary War for like Virginia or some of the other states that were, before Kentucky became a state, you might be able to find something for them as far as, there could be pensions, or, they might be listed on a muster roll. I will say that a lot of times we don't have quite as many military records as some of the other records we have, but we do have our Kentucky Military History Museum, which is just up the hill from us. That's a part of our group. We do suggest sometimes people contacting them, because a lot of them are actually dealing with the military that were in Kentucky, and they might have a better idea of records or information for you. And here's a very faded, tiny muster roll. I do apologize. It's for William Morgan, Company A, I believe, for the Union during the Civil War. But yeah, I just wanted to give an example, because we do have on microfilm certain records basically between Revolutionary War and at least World War II. We may be past that as well, but so you can always look at those on microfilm, and we do have certain book forms of certain listings of different regiments and things like that as well that you can potentially look at.
What's typical information in the muster roll?
Question is, what's typical information in a muster roll, what that would provide? I believe it's just it'll list the men that were in that particular regiment, and I think it would mention like when they, I guess, mustered out of the service. And sometimes, now on this particular example, there's not, they might have a remark that kind of talks about or explains, the things, but it doesn't, this one doesn't particularly. But from what the little bit that I've looked into them, I think it just kind of gives like, it'll give like when they joined, and then like when they basically were mustered out and they got discharged.
So muster and discharge are going to use some of the stuff.
I think so. I'll be honest, like military is not my strongest suit. So, but I do apologize if I'm not giving you the best answer, but
I have nothing to dispute.
Does it have any kind of person, like where they came from?
Some do, some do.
They must- they can tell where they must have been from.
Their ages.
Yeah. If they were asking about the more information that is provided on the muster roll, such as like, their home and ages and things like that. Yes. Yeah. I think they pretty well answered that for you. Yeah. It'll state like a lot of that kind of information too. Hold on, I gotta click on this again. There we go. Okay, and so now I'm going to kind of get more into the, some of this might be a little backwards, but now I'm going to kind of talk a little more about just our general like library hours and some of our policies. Let me check this first, the chat. Oh, yes, I was going to say, anybody here or in on Zoom, if you do have other questions or you want to talk more in detail, you can always contact me. And I believe I have my contact information at the end of this PowerPoint presentation as well. So people can write that down as well. I'll have my email and my phone number. So yes, our library hours, here in the library, we're open Wednesday through Saturday, 10 a.m. till 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Admission is typically, it would basically be, you'd be paying to just get into the, like just our building. You'd be paying typically, I think it's $8 general admission, which would allow you to go into the museum and, take the tours of like the old state capitol. And then you would be able to come up here and sign in and do your research up here in the library. If you're a KHS member, that would all be free. And typically, as far as when you're actually in the library part, you would walk up to our reference desk, and that's going to be basically up towards the middle of our main of our room. And if it's your first time, you're going to need to complete registration paperwork, and it's just you'll sign something, and it's mainly so we can give you a library card and kind of keep track of who's visited us today and that kind of stuff. Typically, the stuff that you can usually bring would be like paper, research notes, electronic devices, and potentially binders depending on the sizing, pencils, because we really typically don't like pens just in case there's an accident or and we do have pencils available at our main reference desk and on some of the tables as well. So cell phones, you can have them in here, but we would suggest to have them on vibrate or at the lowest volume. And then if you did need to make a call, if you could just like step outside temporarily. And there's handheld cameras and electronic devices with camera capabilities. You can actually use those as long as you're not doing flash photography. And then the images that you would be taking would be for your personal reference only, or your own genealogy, not trying to make money off of it. Let's see, you may not reproduce, publish, or exhibit the images you or anyone else takes without the permission of the Kentucky Historical Society. And if you did need to publish anything, you would just contact us, and you would fill out a form and all that kind of stuff. What you cannot bring, typically purses, briefcases, and pretty much bags. I mean, if it's a real tiny bag, there's probably no harm. You typically like books and magazines and original manuscript documents, but there are exceptions that you can discuss with our staff. I already talked about ink pens, permanent markers, scanners, or personal copiers. Tobacco products, food and drink, just because you don't want to stain, spill, make messes. But we do have lockers that you can store things in if you do need to. Okay, research requests. Now, this would be more for if you're not able to physically come here in person. Typically, we have, there's really like 3 particular forms that you would look into depending on what you're looking for. There's a single record request, and that would be really if you're needing like only one record for one ancestor. So for example, if you were looking for a birth record for your great grandmother, you would fill that single record request out and mail that in with the particular research fee, which right now, I know we're about to have a new database program for the whole KHS that might change some of the pricing on certain things. But as of right now, like a single record request would be $15. And I do want to stress also that these forms are supposed to typically be for one particular ancestor. So if you were needing a birth record for your great grandmother and a birth certificate for your great grandfather, you would technically have to do a single record request for each person. However, an exception I would say would be like a marriage record, because I mean, obviously that takes two people. So, if you're looking for your great grandmother and great grandfather, their marriage record, that could just be one request. There- Sorry.
The page from the book or from some of the files, is that possible?
I had a question about if they're wanting it for like a page from a particular book or from a file, if that's possible. Yes, actually, I'm going to get to that because there is a particular form that you would fill out for something like that. Yes. The research request, that's the bigger, meatier request. That one would typically be for one ancestor as well, but that would be if you were wanting a marriage record and a death record and a birth record for your great grandmother. You would want to fill out a research request, or if it's a request that's going to take a lot of time and effort, you're going to have to really dig into your collection for that. That would be the research request. And that would typically, as of right now, if you're a KHS member, that would be $35. If you're a non-member, it'd be $50. There's also photocopy requests, which that would fall more into what the patron's question just a moment ago. That would be more what you would want to do as far as that particular thing. That would be like, yeah, if you're needing specific pages copied from cited sources, or if you're wanting, yeah, if there's like a particular page in a surname file that you know of, or you wanted like 5 pages from this family history book, you would basically fill out the photocopy request form. And now there is typically like a $5 processing fee for just the time and the effort, but then it would basically be, I can't remember if it's 25 cents or 35 cents per page. And so basically then that would all just total together. And then you would just put that amount on the form and mail that in. And then we would basically go and find the document you're requesting. And then we would make the photocopies and mail it back to you. And I have on occasion, because not people don't necessarily always know exactly what is in a book they're interested in having copies of. So I have gone and done like preliminary looks and counted up pages for that patron, so that way they could have an idea of how many pages, like if they knew they had a particular ancestor or a branch of a family, and then I would potentially go find that book and then count up pages that pertain to that family. And then I would let them know, and then we would calculate everything, and then they fill out the form. I do have a link here for where the forms can be found. It can be found on our library research services page. So I'm just letting you know about that in case anybody is curious. And then, yeah, this is, like I said, I have my contact information here at the end. Like I said earlier, my name is Daniel Ware. I'm the genealogy librarian here. You can email me at daniel.ware@ky.gov. And my phone number is 502-782-8098. And if you have any questions or would like to discuss anything, after this or, longer, just let me know, contact me. And I'll sit on here for a moment just in case. So if anybody needs to look at this for a moment.
Another place that you all can check for some of the very early tax lists from late, I think it was 1780 to 1800 on the KGS, the Kentucky Genealogy Society's website. A number of us here at the table did some for, I can remember off the top of my head, Bourbon, Fayette, Jefferson, Davies. They were the early Kentucky counties. They're transcribed and indexed. Also, there was a Bible scan that we did. So there are a number of, the last count that I remember doing was 40 Bibles. The names are there and all of the pages within that Bible. So that's another place where you can
And where
check.
is that? What place
It's
is
on the
that?
Kentucky Genealogy Society's website.
You have to be a member to get access.
Some of it, yes, you will have to. I think the fee used to be $20 to join. And then there are a number of things there that I know we put on when we were all there to check.
Okay. All right, I'm going to move on. Yeah, basically then the conclusion. So All right, this is it, everybody. Thank you. If you have any questions, just let me know on Zoom. If you want to put it in the chat, you can, or anybody here in person. I'm happy to answer any questions I can.
We just recently found an order book deed.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I appreciate you being here
It's
or on Zoom.
transcribed in the
On
desk.
the ancestry.com, mentioned, like, we live in Lexington, and I'm had ancestry, but I pay for it, obviously, I subscribe. But if I want to use, can I do that from home, or is that only when you're in the library that I could use your ancestry?
I have a question about using Ancestry, especially if you have the paid for version versus coming in here.
I mean, because of this whole Zoom thing now, it seems like everything.
Yeah.
is remotely, But does that mean if
Um,
I wanted to use your site while I was here, then when I went home, if I had maybe not made my notes, so that I could understand them, can I then look back up to you to what I was looking at, or do
I was gonna say, yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, I think it's basically a completely different, it'll let you, yeah, because it won't let you do all the same stuff that you,
Okay.
that's true. Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
that's
I just,
true.
you know,
Yeah.
was curious.
Yeah, because unfortunately with the like library version, like you can't really do anything with like the family trees really. I mean, the best you can really do that I've seen from using like the here on site would be like, you can, I mean, find like particular documents and like you can technically like save them to like your computer or like print them out or, you know, or
You have
things like that.
links I could go to.
Yeah.
'Cause that's like
Because
if
you can, yeah,
pay,
because you can send stuff to, yeah, your like
yeah, if
email, I
you pay
believe,
library,
you're
you
used to, I
use
think.
their Databases, but only at the library.
Mhm.
You can't go access. them. So
Right.
it's basically the same. as that.
Yeah, you're very welcome, Judy. I'm glad that they were able to help you out with that.
Here.
Okay, so a question from Miriam. Do you have records from the early pre-revolutionary fort and stations? I mean, there's some, I'll be honest, I haven't really looked into and being able to, I haven't really looked into a lot of that, but yeah, we do have some books that would relate to that. And I would say, if you're able to come in here and look at them or look at anything we would have, I would talk with the reference staff and we would be able to point you to the right direction or help you find it. But yeah, I mean, there's some, but it just it probably just depends. And you're very welcome, Carolyn.
I'm curious on all these things that you say people donate the book.
Mhm.
Like you said, you don't build that collection? Is that collection solely things that people just call you up and donate, or do you?
I have a question about the books and items that we get donated to us, if we have any, if we build our collection or if it's just based on just donations. I'll be honest, I mean, a lot of the stuff, at least since I've been here, has been probably more so donations. I mean, I'm sure we probably on occasion, I mean, because we have budgets for stuff and I'm sure we do like go out of our way to like
That was my thing.
to purchase certain items and things.
You have to reject something, I would think. If you already have it, you wouldn't need another copy.
Let's see.
You're speaking more on title.
I mean, like a lot of like just the books we get here in the library are, I mean, most of them I think are donations, but I mean, a lot of them have been here for, I'll be honest, I'm not sure how long. So some of them may have been bought with like,
Because I'm thinking more the general book collection.
yeah.
I have a lot of
Right,
things
right, right.
that, you know, I would
Right.
never thought of thinking you would want it.
Yeah. I I mean, they'll send us a bunch of different types of books. Like I've gotten book boxes, and some of it's more of like our county related books. Like it'll be like Woodford County, census or and then some of it's like particular books about about a certain town, or it'll be like more like a history of this place. So I mean, they give us all sorts of different stuff. So
is there like a collections person that one should call in if they want to donate something? Would that be the library? Or
yes, they're asking about if there's somebody here that would need to be contacted as far as collections goes. Yes, we do have like different little like collection committees. And so like depending on like the object, like we just started up a book collection committee just like a month ago. And so, we will, if people want to donate books to us, we'll take it and look at it, and we'll basically grade it off of a particular certain, we'll check off certain boxes, like if it's like Kentucky related, or if it's, the condition it's in and things like that. And so depending on how many like points it gets, if it's too low, we'll just automatically reject it. And stuff that we do reject, we try to like contact that person to either let them come back and take back the item, or, in some cases we may, have to be like, okay, if you don't want this, we may have to dispose of it, unfortunately. But then, some items, they check all the flags and we instantly okay it. And then, there's in the middle, we actually have to sit down and like discuss that. And so we do actually, usually when it comes to that year, there usually is like a specific person that you would want to contact, like our main like librarian would be the one you would want to contact for like the library books. But yeah.
because he just went through that with his
Uh-huh.
papers,
Gotcha.
but. I have a lot of Kentucky stuff and no children to leave it to. So I'm like, well, what's going to happen to all this stuff? I never even thought of
Right.
the history center.
Okay. And then Miriam was following up on her previous question. Where would be a good place to find them? Pre-revolutionary fort and stations. I mean, potentially, I'm not sure if our Kentucky Museum, our Kentucky Military History Museum. Right. Yeah. I was gonna say, yeah, I'm not sure if, the Kentucky Military History Museum would be an alternative. We do have books. It's just, we would have to like look up and, find their exact location, because we do have like Kentucky history and, even like Virginia, if it was like in that, particular time period in Revolutionary War history related materials. So it could potentially be in like those sections like that. I would say, yeah, if you're able to like make a trip here at some point, and then we could, help you find that, and look, help you look for that when you're here. But yeah, we do have books. It's just unfortunately we'd have to like really like kind of pinpoint that, that particular subject, I guess. Oh, yes.
This young lady was asking me a question, and I was trying to explain to her, that's true. At one time, Sherry Daniels was here, and I called her, and I brought my family's history, which is multicultural, because they had to meet on it to decide to sell my book that's over there, simply because it is real deep, rich Kentucky history, even though my Caucasian great-great-grandfather was born March 18, 1818 in Louisiana County, Virginia, but came here in 1830, settled in Trigg County, Kentucky.
You're
But
very
with the
welcome,
school
Miriam. I
there,
appreciate you being here and your question.
Going to, decided he wanted to be a medical doctor, but he had to come to Jefferson County, where U of L had started, they established in 1837 medical school. And it takes you on a journey to get all these documents. But Sherry, I brought them to her several years ago, a copy of my own Whitlock.
Thank you, you
family
too.
story, which is over there. But they had to meet on it to decide if it was rich. It's not just African American history. My great-great-grandfather, not only was he a doctor, he served in the state legislature in Frankfurt, where John McKee in the legislature library copied the 1792
Okay.
General Assembly, which has Dr. John C. Whitlock's name, where he served, he was voted in to serve Trigg County in the state legislature. So it's real
Okay,
deep.
so,
It's
I
rich.
just wondered if they had a collection policy. That's what. And I
Okay.
never thought the history center.
Yeah.
I would they would be interested.
yeah, I'm asking about a collection policy. I mean, yeah,
These committees rather than.
yeah, because if it was like like more like a physical object or like an archival item, like that would go before a different group than like necessarily like the group I'm a part of, which with the books. So it kind of just, it depends on I would suggest typically anybody that's curious about donations, I would probably call ahead and like talk to us. And that way we can, sorry, what was that? Oh,
But I have held on to a lot of my friends.
Okay,
Thank
oh,
you.
you're very welcome. I'm gonna let everybody go. I've held everybody hostage for long enough. So thank you all for being here in person and on Zoom. I appreciate everybody, and we wouldn't be able to do this without you. Thank you all and have a great day.
Well, I didn't take some. The eyes. She's fine. I used to be on her. That's fine.